Welcome to another procedural material tutorial. Today we are making this stone brick. As you know, I make a new material every single day and upload that tutorial to YouTube. So if you ever have a request, make sure you throw that in the comments. This is what we are making in the cycles version. There's also an EV version. So yeah, let's get right into it. So to get started setting up our scene, we're just gonna hit Shift A. We're gonna add a plane, and then I'm gonna hit S and 4 to scale it up to about 4 times the scale. Then we can press Control A and apply the rotation and the scale. Then just head over to the shading workspace here, and then we can go to our 3D viewport that we have. We can go to rendered preview. Then on the lighting, I'm just going to be using this default forest one right here. Make sure you uncheck scene world so you can see this. Then I'm just going to have my camera pointing towards a 3D cursor and have this in the view, or I can go to a top view by hitting 7 on the number pad like so. Then over here, I'm just going to be using EV. This material works both in EV and cycles, but if you want to use the displacement that I'll be showing you at the very end, then make sure you're in cycles. For the tutorial part, I'll be using EV, and then at the end, we'll switch to cycles and add the displacement. And then as for colors, I just have ambient occlusion, bloom, and screen space reflections checked. Then in film, I checked unchecked transparent so we don't get any lag. And then color management, I'm using filmic and medium high contrast. So now let's get started. So we're going to press new here. And we're going to call this our stone brick, like so. Then we're going to hit Shift A, search up a brick texture. And now we have our main template. So if we Control Shift and left click, we can see that we have some nice stuff going on here. I'm just going to grab this and move them a little bit this way. So to get this mapped properly, we're going to press Control and T, which is going to give us a mapping node and texture coordinate. If that doesn't work, you go over here to Edit Preferences, go to add-ons and search up the Node Wrangler add-on like this, and then check the box, and then you're good to go. So then we're going to take the UV coordinates into our mapping. You can use object or generated, but when you map it onto a cube, it will look a little funky. So we'll have to just duplicate the material and put it on the other faces. So you can use object if you want, but for this tutorial, we'll be using UV. Next, you're simply going to want to, because the UV mapping works on any object with a UV unwrap. And so yeah, anyways, we're just going to take this and we're going to give us some more space between this because we're going to be doing some interesting things. I'm going to move that over here. I'm going to move the brick texture over here. And on this brick texture, we're going to be changing the settings just slightly. We're going to change the mortar smooth to a 1. And then we're going to leave everything else alone. Next, we're going to be manipulating the offset on this. And this is actually a technique I saw in a default cube video. Basically, it's going to give us some random offset because right now, if we look, we can see that it's moving them all perfectly in sync, but we want this to be sort of a random because the stone bricks aren't perfectly lined up. So yeah, anyways, to do that, it's not too difficult. So we'll just press Shift A here, and we'll search up a separate XYZ node, like this. Then we're going to take this vector and put it into the separate XYZ. Then we're going to take this and basically, if we Control Shift and left click to view the y-axis, it sort of gives us a gradient here. And what we want to do with this is we want to multiply it by our scale essentially. So we hit Shift A, search for a math node, and then we switch this from a conversion method or the function of the math node to multiply. Then we're going to take our y value, plug it into the top here, and then we're going to control our scale by like this. So we'll Shift A, search for a value node like this. This is going to control our brick texture scale essentially. So I'm going to switch this to a 4, then plug this value into the brick texture scale. Then I'm going to hit Shift A, search up a math node like this, change it to multiply, change the bottom value to a 4. We're going to grab this value and plug it into the top. Then we're going to take the result of this and plug it into the value of here. And if we Control Shift and left click this guy, it gives us this. And it was looking a little whack because we are in EV and it's not reading the bloom properly, but essentially that's what it is. If we turn off bloom, it fixes and everything. Anyways, nextly, we're going to hit Shift A and we will search up a math node again. We're going to be plugging this into the value, but we want to change this right here to the seal. And what that's going to do is it gives us a gradient from the bottom to the top. So if we go to here and we change the scale to a 1, we can see the gradient better here, like this. And if this isn't showing up, it is because you are in standard colors. And if you're in standard, it looks like this. But if you are using Filmic, which is what you should be using in a lot of cases, it looks proper. Anyways, I'll just leave the scale at 1 for now. We can change this whenever we want. It's not going to make that much of a difference. It's just going to change how many bricks are in the texture. Anyways, the next step is we're going to want to separate these based on their colors. So let's Shift A, search up a white noise texture. And then we have this. And if we look at the Control Shift and left click the value, we can see that we have our gradient here. It gives it a random value to each of them. Then I'm just going to take all of these and then grab them with G and move them a little bit to the left to give us some more space. Then what we're going to want to do is hit Shift A, search up in Math Node, change the blending here to multiply, or the function, put this value into value here, and then change our value to a 1. And if we Control Shift and left click, essentially it's giving us this. Then nextly, we're going to want to press Shift A and search up another math node. We're going to leave this one on add. We're going to take this value here, plug it into the bottom. Then we're going to take the value of our separate XYZ X and plug it into the top. And what that is doing is it's giving us sort of a gradient from the sides. Then we're going to want to mix this a little bit more. So we'll hit Shift A, search up a combine XYZ, like this. Then we're going to take these and we're just going to move them a little bit higher to get them out of the way. We're going to take the value from this add node, plug it into the X of the combine XYZ, and if we Control Shift and left click, it's looking like this, which is a little weird. Then we just take our Y, which is right over here, and then we plug it into this Y, like this. And now we have something like that. And then when we plug this into the vector from this into our brick texture, if we Control Shift left click our brick texture, we can see this is what's happening. If we take this and plug it in here, we can see now that we have random offset between things. And the scale is pretty small, so we can switch this to like a 4. And you can see that we have random offset going on here between all of our bricks, which is quite nice. There's no symmetry or anything. If we go into the top view, you can see it even better that there's no symmetry. And this is exactly what we wanted. And again, thanks to Default Cube for showing this method in one of his tutorials. And yeah, it's really useful. Anyways, on to the rest of it, making everything into stone. So we're going to press Shift A, switch up a color ramp. And essentially what we're doing right here is we're going to give us our mask. So we'll take the color from our brick texture into this color ramp, Control Shift and left click. And what we want to do in this guy is we want to make everything that is brick white and everything that is the mortar black. This is just going to be a mask to show us where we want the mortar and stuff without there being any blending that we don't want. So we're going to switch the blending mode here from linear to constant. Then we're going to take this white and position it at a 0.1. And what that does is it gives us some different mortar sizes and it gives us all of our bricks where we want them. Next, we're going to give us a few more masks. Just 3. So we'll hit Shift A, search up a color ramp here. Then take the color from the brick texture into the color ramp. Control Shift left click to preview. We're also going to switch this one to constant. And the reason what we're going to do here is we're going to add 3 different kinds of rock. They're going to be very similar, as you saw and you've seen in the thumbnail, but essentially we don't want them to be identical. So what we're going to do with this one is we're going to have 3 different kinds of bump in the rock, and so we're just going to be separating this 3 times, and it'll just give us a little bit more detail and variation in our bricks. So to do that, we're just going to take this white here and move it all the way to the left. Then we're going to take one of these blacks, put it at a 0.333, and the other black at a 0.666, like this. So as you notice here, this is unfortunate because we have white where the mortar is and we don't want that. We just want it to be where the brick is. So to fix that, we just take this white and we're going to position it at a 0.01. Then we're going to hit the plus sign here. We're going to switch this new node all the way to a black and position it at a 0. And the change on this isn't very much, but you can see in the center here where it is the perfect mortar, we have it white. Obviously in the mask here, if you Control Shift left click, it covers everything. So this isn't going to make a huge difference, but it will make a slight difference in the end, and so that's why we do it. Anyways, the next step is we're going to take this color ramp right here and press Shift D, move it down here, take this color into here, Then we're just going to be mixing up placement of these. So we're going to take the first black one and hit the minus sign because we don't need it anymore. Then we're just going to take the first white, change it to a black, take the second node, change it to a white, like this. So now we have another layer of our mask, like so. We have this and this. Then we're just going to simply press Control Shift and D, move this down here. Then we're going to change this far black to a white and this other one to a black. And now that we have all of our masks here, we have the main one up top, this one that takes out certain amounts of bricks, this one that takes out other bricks, and this one that takes out the last few bricks. All we need to do is give us some rocks that flow into these masks. So to do that, it is quite a simple task. So to add the rocks, we'll press Shift A, search up a noise texture. I'm going to press Control T, and we're going to be using our UV coordinates here. Then Control Shift left click this noise texture to see what we've got going on here. So essentially, this is a really simple task. All we need to do is duplicate this guy 3 times. So we'll hit Control Shift and D, and then Control Shift and D again. And we have 3 noise textures for our 3 different kinds of rocks. Now we just have to change the values on these. So on this top one, we're going to leave the scale at a 5, the detail at a 16, and the roughness at a 0.6. Then this next one, the scale will be a 7, the detail is 16, and the roughness at a 0.6. And this last one, scale at a 10, detail 16, not 216, just 16, and then the roughness at a 0.6 again. And if we Control Shift and left click to preview all of these, this is the top one we have here, this is the middle one, and this is the bottom one. This is just giving us different levels of fineness in the bump of the rock. And if we wanted to, we could add color ramps to further add contrast, but I've found that the color ramps are not necessary here, so we're just going to be using the noise textures as they are. Then to mix these, it's not too complicated. We're going to press Shift A, search up a mix node, because we want to be only affecting where we have the specific rock. So we're going to take the color from here into our mix factor. Then we'll take the color from this bottom noise texture into color 2. Then we'll take color 1 and change it to a black. And if we Control Shift left click this guy, we can now see that where there was white, we now have some mixed colors of our noise going on, which is exactly what we want. So then we just have to do that for each of these guys. So I'm going to get this guy, hit Shift D, move him up, take the factor from the middle noise texture into color 2, and then take color from this one into factor. Control Shift left click on this guy, and we can see that we now have some more stuff going on here, which is awesome. Then we just have to mix this guy with this guy. So to do that, we'll press Shift A, search up a mix node, mix RGB, like this. We're going to switch the blending mode here to add. Then we're going to take the color from this guy into color 1, color from the bottom one into color 2, and switch the factor to a 1. And Control Shift left click to preview. We now have this, and this is starting to look quite nice. Now, the next step is going to be doing this in the top one here. And to do that, we will press Shift A. Actually, we'll just duplicate this guy right here, Shift D. Then we'll take the factor from this noise texture into color 2, and the color from this one into the factor. And then we preview. We can see that we are affecting this right here. We're also affecting the mortar, but our mask is going to cancel that out, so don't worry. So then we're going to press Shift A, search up one last mix node right here, switch the blending mode to add, factor to 1, take the color from this guy into color 1, and the color from this guy into color 2. Then we have this with the mortar. Now we just have to tell it not to affect the mortar, because currently we can see these really awkward lines here, and like not where the black is, but in between, and we don't want that. So I'm just going to give us a little bit more space. I'll just select everything, grab it, and move it a little bit. And then next, I'll just simply add another mix node, Shift A, switch up mix RGB here. Take the color from this guy into color 2. And then we're going to take the color from this color ramp into the factor. And we Control Shift and left click. I'm actually going to switch this color to a black for now. We can see that we are now affecting everything accordingly to our mask, and it's looking pretty decent like that. Anyways, nextly, we should have to add in a little bit of bump where the mortar is, not too much, so it'll be pretty simple. We'll just press Shift A, search up a noise texture like this. Then we'll press Control T, make sure we use UV for the vector. Then on this guy, just switch the scale to a 50, the detail to a 16, and we'll put the roughness all the way to 1. And to give it even less height, we're going to want to lower that, so we'll add a color ramp here with Shift A and search. Then we'll switch the white value to a 0.1 on, or 0.05 actually on the value scale, just so that we don't have very much height here. Then we're going to take that color into the color 1 instead of the black. Now if we Control Shift left click to preview, this is our height map, and it's looking pretty darn good. So now all we have to do is plug this into our bump. So we'll hit Shift A, search up a bump node, like this. Then we're going to take the color from this guy into the height. We're going to leave both the strength and the distance on a 1, plug the normal into the normal of our shader. And if we preview our shader, we currently have this going on right here. We can sort of see the bump. I'm going to lower the color here a little bit so we can see it a little bit better, get more of a stone going on here. And yeah, for the lighting, we just have the HDRI working right now, no point lights or anything. But yeah, this is what it's sort of looking like right now. So now we have to add in the color, and then at the end, we'll be adding in some displacement for those of you who are doing this in cycles. But right before the color, all we want to do is take this roughness and we're going to put it at a 0.8, just so that it's a little bit rougher, it's not so shiny. Obviously, you can change it to whatever value you want. You can make it super shiny or not, depending on the type of rock you're making this. We're making this a stone, so we want it to be pretty rough. So a 0.8, a 0.75, something like that is going to be your best bet. Anyways, next, I'm just going to Control Shift and left click our mask again, because we're going to be factoring in our mask into the color. And the way we're going to do that, it will simply press Shift A, search up a mix node, like this. We're going to change this color 1 value here to a sort of a dark gray. I'm going to give you the hex value for it actually. It is a 69696E. Again, that is a 69696E, like this. And then this other one is going to be the rock color. And that value is an A7A5AE. Again, that is an A7A5AE, like this. And obviously you can change these colors however you want, but that's what I'll be using. Then for the factor on this, we're going to take our original color ramp mask and plug it into here. Now we Control Shift and left click, we can see that we have this right here. You can also technically use this mask right here and plug it into the factor. And what that looks like is something like this. It gives us a little bit more variation, but it's also not exactly what we want to do. So we're going to be using this one, but you can use whichever one you think looks better. Then we just take this color into our base color here, like this, and then Control Shift left click our principled BSDF. And we have our finished material. This is a bit flat on the ground right now, so I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees on our X. Oops, no, not delete, rotate. There we go. And we can see that we have some nice stone brick in Eevee. And all we have to do for cycles is make sure we go to our cycles renderer. So I'm going to go ahead and just solid real quick just while we change our settings. So I'm going to go to cycles, make sure we have denoise in the viewport. Then I want to go into the feature set and make sure we are on experimental. Then head over here back into the shading workspace. I'm actually going to duplicate this for the cycles one, so we'll call this one stone brick cycles, because if we use the cycles one in Eevee with the extra node displacement, it gets really laggy for no reason, and we don't want that. So I'm going to hit Shift A, search up a displacement node here, like this. Then we're going to take our mix up here, right? And we're going to move the color from our mask into the height. If you're wondering what this node is again, it is, let me hit over here to rendered. It is this one. It's the one with the rock mixed in. It's not the main one. We're just going to put that into the displacement. So yeah, anyways, on this displacement, we're going to switch the scale here to a 0.1 and the mid-level to a 0. And we're going to leave it on object space. Then we take our displacement here, plug it into this one. Then we Control Shift left click our principled shader. Then I'll go ahead and head over to the viewport real quick. If I head over to the layout, then on our material settings here, we can scroll down and we're going to want to switch this on settings from bump only, where it says displacement, to displacement and bump so that we can see the actual displacement happening. But currently, this mesh only has 4 sides, and so to use our adaptive subdivision, we need to go over here, and I'm gonna hit tab, right click subdivide. I'll just subdivide it 10 times real quick, like so. Then I'm gonna head over to the modifiers tab, search up a modifier, subdivision surface, just to give our wall some geometry, and I'll turn on adaptive subdivision like this. Then I'm also gonna check this simple box so that we don't get any unnecessary curving on the edges of our plane. Then I'm going to hit Control-Alt-0 to move my camera to my view, just to give us some better perspective on our wall, so we can always teleport back to it after we've been viewing like this. So then all I have to do is go over here and hit rendered. And here we can see what it's looking like with just the HDRI. I'm going to go ahead and add a point light really quickly. So I'll head back to solid real quick so I can move in the viewport quickly. Like this. I'm just gonna add this point light over here. Do something like that. Set the watts to like 1,000. I'm actually gonna go to a side view here so we can see the actual displacement getting displaced. Then I'll go back over here to the rendered preview. And as we can see here, we're only on 10 samples, and we can see the displacement sort of starting to take place if I pan a little more to the side. So here on this side view, we can sort of see some displacement happening, but if you think it's a little bit too weak, we can always head back over to the shading workspace here and change the scale to like a 0.5. I'm just gonna, this is sort of exaggerated, it's gonna be a little bit too much. But if we head back over here, obviously we can play with the scale and we can get some really rockiness. Obviously it's putting the mortar way back because, like I said, this is exaggerated. So yeah. Anyways, you can play with the strength on that and until you get something you like. But anyways, this is what the finished material is looking like. Hopefully you enjoyed and can find use for this in your stone brick walls. It looks really good in the Cycles version. The EV version also looks really good. I'll go ahead and show you the EV version one last time real quick, just so that we can get that in here. I'll switch to EV as well. And then while it switches the render tab, we can see that this still looks really good. It doesn't give us the actual displacement, obviously, because we are not using the Cycles adaptive subdivision stuff, but it still looks quite good and will look good in the game engine for sure. Anyways, thank you for watching this tutorial. I make procedural materials every day, so if you ever need any help making a material that you can't quite figure out, just contact me in the comments below or something and let me know what material that is, and I'll figure out a way to make it. So I'll see y'all in the next one.